Good morning, everybody. I think it's 10 o'clock now, so we'll make a start. Firstly, thank you very much for taking the time to watch the webinar this morning. We're going to talk a little bit about Cyber Essentials Plus and what the difference is between the Cyber Essentials Basic and the Plus, and maybe why you should think about upgrading. I'm delighted to be joined today by Frank Manning from In Practice. Hi, Frank.
Hi, Jen.
How are you doing today, Frank?
I'm good, thank you. And you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Okay, so we'll get started. So here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the difference between Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus, why you might need to think about the Plus, how you go about choosing an assessor, what's involved in the process, some of the resources that you might need within your own organisation, and what you need to do to get ready for the assessment. And then we'll talk a little bit about how much it costs to go through Cyber Essentials Plus. If you do have any questions as we go through, you can type them into the question bar. If we have time at the end, we'll try our best to answer them. If not, we'll definitely follow those up with you after the webinar, and hopefully you get something useful from it. Okay, so quick introductions then. I'm Jen Williams from Lawyer Checker. I've actually had a head of IT role here now for the last 5 years. More recently, I've been a Cyber Essentials assessor and a technical auditor, and I also audit ISO 27001. So we've last year certified over 100 law firms against Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. Frank, do you want to give us a little bit of insight into you?
Yes, certainly. I work for an organisation called In Practice, and we provide a number of services to law firms, one of which is IT support and assistance. As part of that, I tend to cover IT strategy, some Cyber Essentials work, some GDPR work, and a number of other what I would describe as management functions. I've been looking after IT for about 25 years. I'm working with law firms for about 8 or 9 years.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. What Cyber Essentials Plus is. So both Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus are standards that were introduced by the National Cybersecurity Centre. The National Cybersecurity Centre is a government body that was set up to make Britain a safe place to do business, and recognising that SMEs make up quite a large proportion of our economy. The National Cybersecurity Centre came up with this Cyber Essentials standard that would allow businesses of any size with any kind of size of security budget to be able to implement some really basic controls to reduce their risk of cyber attack by 80%. There's lots of kind of statistics at the bottom of the slide about why you should be thinking about cybersecurity, and I've kind of taken that as a given because you've attended this webinar that you already are thinking about cybersecurity, which is great. So yeah, the scheme is all about really basic technical controls, and we're not talking about anything that's that costs huge amounts of money. So that's kind of what the scheme is. Once you've been certified against Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus, you have a certificate that lasts you for 12 months before you need to renew it. Within the process, you'll have a look at the your security arrangements that you've got in place. You'll have that assessment marked by an assessor, and for Cyber Essentials Plus, you'll also have a site visit from an assessor. Okay, so this is roughly what's included in the Cyber Essentials standard. So it looks at use secure settings for your devices, so making sure that anybody who's got admin accounts isn't able to access the web or email through your admin accounts, because that presents a higher security threat. Making sure that you've got firewalls at the boundaries of all your networks, making sure that all your devices and software is up to date and patched. So everybody will remember the NHS WannaCry attack that was in the media a couple of years ago now. That was actually all possible and so widespread because the NHS were using out-of-date operating systems on their devices. So something as simple as making sure that your operating systems are patched can actually really help you out. Making sure that you've got antivirus and anti-malware in place. And making sure that you know who has access to your data and services. So they're the kind of areas that are covered. When you do Cyber Essentials Plus, an assessor comes on site to your organisation and will do a thorough scan of your network and all your devices to make sure that all your patches are in place and to make sure that there are no vulnerabilities that criminals can actually see without being on your network. And that for me is the key bit, is we'll show you what criminals can see before they find it. And you can then work with your IT provider to iron some of this out. Frank, is there anything that you wanted to add there about how you can help firms to look after some of this stuff?
Yes, I think just looking back at the slide with the 5 controls in there, you know, there are a number of areas that cross over. There are a number of areas that you can quite easily put solutions in for that don't take a lot of management. You know, looking at viruses and malware, there are now products now where you can get a combined firewall, content scanner in one, which takes a lot less management, has good reporting, and you know, quite easily lets you fulfill your responsibility in that area, really. You know, so it's just passing on that knowledge to people.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so why might you need Cyber Essentials Plus? Okay, cyber criminals are also running a business at the end of the day. So they're going to target firms who they perceive to be easier. It's more efficient for them. They're not going to need loads of technical knowledge to be able to attack you in a low-tech way. Cyber Essentials Plus shows that your business has got really good processes and controls for keeping all your data secure. And what's the most important thing to me is that criminals can easily see whether you've attained this standard or not. So there's a publicly available database of all firms that have achieved Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus. And it doesn't take much for a criminal to search that database and to find out actually if you've not implemented those basic controls. You can also demonstrate to your clients that you take cybersecurity really seriously and that you can trust them with your data. As in my head of IT role, I struggle to work with a supplier who hasn't got Cyber Essentials because they're telling me that they haven't implemented the basics of cybersecurity, and I certainly don't want to transfer any of my data to them. Frank, I don't know how your business feels about working with kind of non-certified organisations, but that would be my view.
Yes, and I think because you and I probably see a lot of the problems that come out of not having the basic cyber security controls in place, you are very wary about dealing with other businesses. And I think quite often now I'm seeing clients ask more and more to either produce a Cyber Essentials certificate, an ISO 27001 certificate, or really to jump through hoops to try and prove that they are secure in the most basic sense.
Yeah, we had a great example of that last week actually, and I was sent a 100-question supplier questionnaire, and it's great that those questions are being asked, but it's kind of, you're in a much stronger position if you've got those certificates to be able to show. And I think clients are starting to demand more now of the businesses that they're using because they're more aware of threats to their data thanks to our friend GDPR.
That they are, and I think that In essence, quite often the customer or the client that is asking you for your security credentials is having to provide them to their customers at the same time.
Yeah,
So that's always important, because you could lose them as a customer just because their customers want their third-party suppliers to be accredited.
yeah, totally agreed. Okay, so where do you start choosing a Cyber Essentials Plus assessor? So there are numerous accreditation bodies that you could approach. However, lawyer checkers specialise in the legal sector. We work exclusively with law firms, so we already understand how a law firm works, how your IT infrastructure is likely to be, and any internal processes that you're already likely to have. When we come on site and do your assessment and your vulnerability scans and your technical audit, if you then follow that advice, you will pass Cyber Essentials Plus, and we'll guarantee that. So if you implement the controls that we suggest are missing, you will absolutely pass Cyber Essentials Plus. We make our reports when we report after the site visit. We make them jargon free, and that's really important to me, because there's absolutely no point in us telling you the minute technical details in a way that isn't understandable to the whole business for you to be able to make a good decision. So what we normally do is we'll give you an explanation of what vulnerability is, and we'll also back that up with the details that you need to give to your IT provider so that they can help you to fix it. So our reports are all very accessible. Frank, I know you have a service where you'll actually help law firms to prepare for going through Cyber Essentials Plus. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, that's fine. We found that law firms are not alone, but in particular, for doing Cyber Essentials or any other process, it's all about capacity and knowledge and the necessary skills in-house. And quite often law firms are stretched. The IT person or people in a law firm may be doing lots of workflow development or lots of user assistance, and simply do not have the capacity. So we tend to engage with law firms. We come along, we have a quick chat, we do a gap analysis audit, where we look at each of the technical controls and what is contained within them, and then we report back with a gap analysis saying whether you meet the control, you don't meet the control, and how we think you can meet the control. At that point, the law firm would then need to implement the necessary changes. We're happy to give assistance on that, or just simply give advice. Following that, when it's time to submit the application, we find our strength can be that we know what all of the questions are and what they mean, and it's being able to answer them properly, and submit the evidence. We always make sure that we see evidence, because we see this as a proper procedure rather than a box ticking exercise.
I think that last point is actually really adds value to a firm, because a lot of the assessments that I see is that where they don't quite meet the standard, it's quite often to do with like subtleties in the wording of the questionnaire. So the fact that you that in practice understands how that works is actually really helpful to me as an assessor, that you can make sure that you're explaining those nuances to the firm.
Yes, I mean, we can engage with a firm and find out that they're really tied up in the most ludicrous password policy,
Yeah.
when actually they just need something robust in place to change a password when they feel it's been compromised.
Yeah, exactly. This is all about keeping it simple, and I think that's why the standard works really, really well.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go through a little bit about the certification process. How do you get from 0 to having a Cyber Essentials Plus certificate? And it's actually a really straightforward process. So first of all, you agree to go through the certification process, and you'll be given some help and guidance. You might choose at that point to have some consultancy with In Practice. You'll then be sent by Lawyer Checker a link to our online assessment portal and some credentials to get into that. You'll answer some questions, really basic questions about your infrastructure. So have you got firewalls? Have you got a strong password policy? Have you got separate user accounts and administrator accounts so that we're not having admin accounts doing day-to-day activities? Have you got anti-malware across all your devices? Are your operating systems patched? And once you've gone through that process, you'll submit that. We'll get to see it, and we can provide you some initial feedback. And at that point, we'll actually book in a date with you to send an assessor on site to your office. And that's where we'll conduct the vulnerability scans. So we'll do an external scan, which means we're looking at your infrastructure from the outside, so as a criminal would. We then do an internal scan, which means that we're looking at your network if somebody's managed to breach your perimeter. And this we don't, so it's not the same as a penetration test where we're actually exploiting the vulnerabilities. We're just identifying them, so that you found them before any cyber criminal does. Once you've been through that process, you'll get a full report detailing any areas that need changes. You'll then submit evidence of having done those changes, and at that point we can then issue your Cyber Essentials Plus certificate. What I will say, in my experience last year of having done Cyber Essentials Plus audits, I'm yet to do one where I haven't found at least one high risk or critical externally facing vulnerability. And I always kind of find it really interesting that law firms will choose to have their accounts audited against solicitors' accounting rules. And you go through all kinds of compliance audits. I think it's a really, really good idea to also audit what your IT team or your IT provider are doing. And I'm sure, Frank, you'll agree with that. And this certificate will give you the peace of mind that your IT provider are keeping your devices up to date and are doing those basic things that you're expecting them to do.
Yeah, I think I'd just add to that as well, Jen. What I find quite often is that sometimes the law firm, it's a difficult conversation to have with the IT provider to say to them, we need to see your credentials and see that you're doing all these things on our behalf. Somebody external like you or I can quite easily ask those questions without being confrontational.
Yeah, that's right. And I think most IT providers have seen this standard before, and they recognise it. So they recognise the importance when you're asking for that work to be done.
They do, yes.
Okay, so one of the questions we always get asked: who needs to complete the assessment? So in short, anybody in the business who knows enough about the company's IT infrastructure to be able to answer some questions. Now, this might be a combination of people. It might be a combination of your compliance team along with somebody from your outsourced IT provider. If you've got an in-house IT department, it might be them plus another person from the business. Or you can choose to use a consultant that can help you to work between all of the parties that you might have involved in this to be able to ask the right questions. So I know some law firms will ask us to talk to their IT provider or ask a consultant to talk to their IT provider. I've seen everybody from secretaries to cashiers to managing partners who are submitting assessments. So it's perfectly possible for anybody in the business to do it if you know a little bit about your IT infrastructure. So what do you need to put in place then before you're ready for assessment? Frank, I know you'll have much more to say on this than I will. So if I just give a quick kind of overview and you can add anything you feel is relevant. So essentially you need some policies or procedures or controls in place. So it might be a technical control, it might be training, or it might be a written policy to make sure that you have secure user settings on all the devices. And all that means is, are they all password protected, and have they only got the user accounts on them that need to be there? you have to make sure that all your devices are up to date. I can't stress how important that is for your kind of overall security posture. So make sure that if you're on Windows 7, now you start to upgrade to Windows 10 that's supported. And making sure that you apply any software or operating system patches within 14 days, and you've got a process for checking that. Make sure that you have a good antivirus on there. Windows Defender's actually now come up to the standard where the Cyber Essentials body will recognise that as a good antivirus protection. And make sure that you know who has access to your data and your settings. Make sure that you know what data your users have access to, and that they only have access to the minimum that they need to be able to do their job effectively. Frank, was there anything you wanted to add?
I think, Jen, that it just shows what a simple set of controls it is that you can explain it, that quickly on one slide. But yes, it's about knowing what you have and how you protect it, really. It's much more about things than people, is
Yeah.
my understanding.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of questions on there about making sure users are locked out if they do decide to leave your business. But yeah, you're right. It is mostly about kind of IT controls.
It is, and everything in the whole standard is of value. You mentioned locking users out when they leave. The number of firms that I see that don't have a policy for doing this, and you've had to let go of a fee earner or a secretary or another person, and then their user account is open for the next 2 or 3 months. They can still send email. Where if you have a policy that you just make part of your HR policies to close that account, archive the mailbox and give somebody access to it, it's simple, it's done, and you can sleep at night, really. So every single control within Cyber Essentials, I believe, has good value to the business, which is why it's important to do it properly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, let's talk about costs. This is always the second question I always get asked. How much should you budget? So, for the actual Cyber Essentials Plus assessment, it's £1,200 plus VAT, and this covers your assessment fee and also the site visit to conduct your vulnerability scan. We don't charge extra for reporting days or anything like that. That's all in. If you wanted to use kind of consultants, there's obviously an additional charge for that. And if there's any remediation work that needs doing, you might find you have some kind of a small fee from your IT provider, although in most cases this should already be in a support contract that you have with them, that they'll keep your devices up to date and that kind of thing. So it's not a huge cost to have all this reassurance that your data's safe, and to have the badge you can use on your website, your email footers, your client letters. You do also get a small amount of free cyber insurance included with this if you do it through Lawyer Checker. It's not a huge amount, but I think it's really good added value. And for me, it's nothing compared to the potential cost incurred if you get some of this stuff wrong. There was a new data set published last year that suggested that the average cost to a UK SME was £115,000. So when you compared that to a small outlay of £1,200, it looks totally different. Frank, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to say about that.
Yes, just a point on costs, really, in that you mentioned that there may be a charge from the IT provider. My experience is that the IT provider actually welcomes the fact that you're giving them a procedure on what you would like them to do, how you would like them to create your users, how you would like them to close user accounts, how you would like them to build computers, because that they feel much more comfortable doing things to your standards than having just to guess the standard, really, which in turn makes their help desk a lot quieter. So I think quite often that there isn't particularly a cost. That there is if we find that you have, Windows Server 2003 throughout the business, there's obviously going to be a cost associated with that. But otherwise, it's generally okay.
Okay.
From
That's
a
interesting, yeah.
from a consultancy point of view, um, we give varying levels of help. Sometimes we just do a report and send it back, and the client works with it and goes on to submit the evidence and be certified. Other times we get much more involved. We're happy to give as much or as little as is required to keep the process moving, because that's important. A lot of these projects will just go stale because of a lack of resource.
Okay, that's really good insight. Thank you very much, Frank. We're going to make an offer to those webinar attendees. If you want a quick consultation on where you think you might be at or what you think you might need to do to get through Cyber Essentials, please let us know, and we can offer that free 15-minute consultation for you to ask any questions. Our contact details are on the screen now. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time today. We did have one question actually about whether the slides are going to be available after the webinar. We do always send out a recording to all attendees, so you'll get a recording of the webinar. But yeah, thank you very much for listening today, and hopefully you've taken something useful from it. Thank you very much, Frank, for joining me. I think your insight as a consultant was really, really valuable. So thank you very much for that.
Yes, thanks, Jen, for having me.
No problem. We're going to leave it there. Hope everybody else has a really good day.